someone sees and tries to grab your gun, are they an imminent threat? Yes. Yes, they are. There is an immediate threat of violence and danger to you, grave bodily harm or death to you exists in that moment when they try to grab your gun, because they are showing their intent to hurt you by reaching for a tool that is capable of hurting you, and they're taking it from you, so they're willing to get violent with you to get your tool of force. That's a pretty big indicator that they have intentions of hurting you to get it or hurting you after they get it. Is there actual harm happening in that moment? Maybe. Is there, if someone is physically harming you to get to your gun, is there an imminent element of deadly force on the horizon? Someone applying deadly force to you? Yes, because they are trying to get that tool that is capable of deadly force. Even though the force in that moment is just ordinary force, they are showing that they have intent to escalate that. What if you're waiting at a bus stop and you're on the side of a busy street and you get into a verbal altercation with someone that escalates to a physical altercation? Is there an imminence element to death or serious bodily harm from your environment? Maybe a physical fight, throwing fists with someone wasn't a lethal encounter, but because you're next to a busy street, does that then escalate it to a lethal encounter? I would say yes. Imminence means that there is an immediate threat of death or bodily harm. There's an immediate threat. It's not a future use of force, and it's not a past use of force. So a past use of force would be winning a fight. An example, there's this elderly gentleman that pulls up into a parking lot and sees that there's a car wrongfully parked in a handicap spot. He decides that he wants to take it upon himself to engage with the person driving the car, which is a young lady, while her boyfriend was inside the store, and give her the riot act. Well, she texts her boyfriend, say, there's this guy that's, yelling at me or whatever. I'm not really sure what she said. And her boyfriend comes out and shoves him really hard to the ground. The man that was shoved, the elderly man that engaged with the woman to begin with, is elderly and not in as great of shape, size, or youth that the gentleman that pushed him was in. So when he fell to the ground, he decided he wanted to draw his gun in defense of himself. Now, at that moment, that made sense because there was a big disparity of force there. There was an imminence element of future use of force from the man that just pushed him. He had no reason to think that he was going to stop after that big hard shove. So it would be reasonable for him at that moment to draw his gun for the threat of imminent force against him. Now, when he drew his gun, that man backed up and he withdrew from the fight. Now, is there an imminence threat? There is not a threat there any longer. So, unfortunately, that man still decided to shoot his gun. So he pointed it at the guy. The guy backed off, clearly withdrew. He waited for probably 2 seconds before he fired that round. Shot him once in the chest. The guy ran off and he ended up dying over it. And that was him winning a fight. That was him wanting to be the winner and punishing him for him shoving him. That is not what that's for. That tool is only for stopping the threat of violence in that moment. It does not work on past threats of violence or past uses of violence. You don't get to give consequences for someone hurting you. You use it to escape to safety. John Correa from Active Self-Protection likes to say it's a shield, not a sword. That's huge. It's a shield. It is used to defend yourself, not to be an aggressor, not to win a fight. And that's super important. Really important. So it's also not used to solve the threat of future use of force. I'm going to go home and get my gun and come back and shoot you. Well, if I did come back with a gun, I would then become an imminent threat. Even though I'm not shooting you in that moment, if I actually came back with a gun and I was now in your presence with my gun after I just told you I was going to go home and get it and shoot you with it, I am an imminent threat now. But in that moment when I said I'm going to go home and get my gun and come back and shoot you, I am not an imminent threat because I do not have the ability and the opportunity to apply that level of force. There's a concept called AOJ, and it works to understand the imminence element. So AOJ, ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. First off, do I possess the ability to carry out the act of violence? In most cases, the answer to that is yes. What if it's a 4-year-old? That's different. Me as a full-grown adult can apply some level of force to you, and I have the ability to cause you serious harm. Opportunity. Do I have the opportunity to use ability to harm you? Let's say I'm in my car and you're in your car next to me and you had cut me off, so I start waving my knife at you from my car while you're in your car, all locked up, windows up, everything. Have I shown you that I'm willing to use it? Yes. Am I able to use it? Yeah, I am able to use it, but I don't have the opportunity to use it. Okay, you're locked up in your car through that really durable glass, and it would be quite difficult for me to get to you with my knife and apply that level of force. So I do not have the opportunity to apply said force. And then the last one is jeopardy, which goes to the state of mind of the person that's trying to hurt you. Are you reasonable in thinking that they had their eyes on you? Their intent was to hurt you. And are you reasonable in thinking that? It comes down to being reasonable because you can't read minds. You're going to have to articulate why you thought that they had intent to hurt you. And, if you can say, well, when my shirt lifted up, I saw them look at my gun and I saw them get this, they tighten their jaw and they looked at it with the forward movement and they were going to grab it. You'd have to articulate body language. You would have to articulate things that they said, where they were looking. I mean, it can get very detailed. But the better that you can articulate why you saw that intent, the better off you're going to be answering those questions, when the prosecutor asks them. So their intent, and you have to be kind of careful with the word intent, and that's why they use the word jeopardy, is because you're trying to prove the amount of jeopardy that you were in. And how can you articulate the level of jeopardy that you were in? And that comes down to really understanding your surroundings and being aware of one, what people are capable of, and being able to recognize pre-incident indicators in people so that way you can articulate why someone was an imminent threat. And this is also a big aspect of avoiding violence, because if you can recognize an imminent threat before it's actually harming you, then you can avoid it, you could deter it, you could delay it, you can escape. I mean, you have many more options. Another thing that John Correa from Active Self-Protection says is awareness buys you time and time buys you options. That's huge. Have a good day.